That is very important for parents to know before they go for this insurance for the very baby, because it's a lie. It's not an insurance for that baby. So if you're going to have only one child, its own blood is useless in case of genetic disorders.
This is the Birth Agni podcast, the fire that brings us alive, that burns myths and opens a channel of authentic natural birth stories. This show debunks the many myths of the medicalized births, showcases the plethora of choices a pregnant couple can make to embark on their empowered birth journey. I'm Divya Kapoor, a certified birth and lactation counselor and an aspiring traditional birth attendant. Let's get the flames blazing high.
Cord stem cell banking. What you must know. Cord stem cell banking, there's a lot of interest in knowing whether someone should go for cord stem cell banking or not, even more today in India, and which is the reason this episode is here today for you, than learning about a better birth for you and the baby, primarily because of the heavy marketing and big claims from the blood banking companies about the benefits of this insurance. Now, there are so many questions that moms come up with in the classes, in the community. What are you really insured against when you blood bank? What are the chances of you needing that support in the future is often a lurking question that we all have about stem cell banking. So in this episode, we answer this for you, and you will be amazed at learning how nobody ever dispelled the myths for you. However, this episode has its limitations, and I cover this topic in the finest of details in my exclusive childbirth classes, which you can explore from the website www.birthagni.com/birthclasses. You can also book a free discovery call with me where I will help you choose the right program for you, because there are 3 programs and one breastfeeding and postpartum exclusive. So if you are not able to figure out which one fits for your needs, you can absolutely book a free discovery call, and trust me, there is no pressure. This call helps me learn about your individual needs, and this helps you understand about me, my way of practice, how I offer individual support, one-to-one private support to couples, and if it aligns to both you and me, only then we go ahead. There is no pressure on you as well as not on me. So this is how we practice. This is how I work. So it's always better to inquire than assume, right? So the classes cover more on this, meaning we learn how to support your birth and your baby's gentler entry into the world while making the right decisions about what to do with the cord after the baby's birth, placenta, the beautiful angelic placenta, and its uses, as well as making tinctures a lifelong medicine for you and your children in future in this exclusive private one-to-one classes. So today, here on this episode, what do we discuss? We discuss the brief history of cord stem cell banking, the myths around it, what is the cord blood designed for, and where does it belong? The American College of Gynecologists guideline, ACOG, and some news articles. What do they have to say about the private blood banking that is prevalent in India? So before we even move ahead with the episode, I would like to first share the preliminary information with you, which is that there are 2 types of blood banking. One is private blood banking, where you privately store the baby's blood for future, for you and your family exclusively. Then there is a public bank, wherein everybody donates their blood there, and whoever needs it can take it from that public bank by paying a fee. So that's how it works, right? With that information, let's begin. So for the detail in the history, I'm taking an excerpt from an article published in National Library of Medicine, NIH. The article is called A History of Cord Blood Banking and Transplantation. It's written by Joanne Kurtzberg, who is one of the first people who was involved in the first research where cord blood was used to treat a problem, right? So it's in her words, as published in the article. She says, "My interest in blood stem cells and cord blood dates back to my fellowship in pediatric hematology oncology at Duke. During my fellowship, I worked on the development of novel anti-leukemia drugs. Hall Broxmare, who would go on to become a pioneer in the use of cord blood as a source of donor cells for bone marrow reconstitution mentored me as I studied normal and malignant hematopoietic stem cells isolated from bone marrow, fetal liver, and umbilical cord blood. So there was another person here who's called Hall Broxmere, who was her senior, who helped her with her study on cord blood, and he was the person who actually did pioneer the use of cord blood for various diseases. So she says during her work there was a patient with FA, Fanconi anemia, which is a genetic disease causing leukemia and needs a bone marrow transplant. This boy did not have a match, but her mother became pregnant again. The unborn fetus was tested to see if she was affected with FA, and if not, was a match for Matthew, who was the baby here who had the illness. So there was a baby who had an illness called Fanconi anemia, and this baby did not have a match to help him with bone marrow transplantation. So since there was no match for him for bone marrow transplantation, when her mother became pregnant and these researchers were already looking at cord blood for helping, in this area of study, they decided to be able to take the mother's permission to be able to do this research on Matthew, because nothing else was available to help him. So Matthew's sibling was a healthy and HLA identical match. You will learn about how is HLA matched with different cord bloods in the following sections on this episode. So there was a preliminary matching which was required with Matthew's sibling, whose cord blood was to be used, who was about to be born. So Dr. Broxmere research had confirmed that cord blood was enriched for highly proliferative hematopoietic cell progenitors, even more so than bone marrow, and hypothesized that cord blood could serve as a substitute donor for bone marrow transplantation. So this doctor did a research and he hypothesized that similar to bone marrow transplantation, cord blood could also be used as a substitute donor. So shortly after the birth of Matthew's sister, the cord blood was collected into a wide-mouthed bottle containing heparin to prevent clotting. That's a medicine to prevent clotting. HLA typing was confirmed at Duke, meaning the matching was confirmed after the birth. Although Matthew experienced an infusion reaction, there was no significant complication, and 19 days later, he engrafted with his baby sister's cord blood cells, effectively curing Matthew of Fanconi anemia. Now in his early 30s, he's leading a healthy, normal life. So this was how cord blood was first used to help prevent or cure a disease as rare as Fanconi anemia and as life-threatening as Fanconi anemia. But you do understand from this that there was a preliminary matching which was required, even if they were siblings, to be able to use it in the case of Matthew, and they already knew that cord blood was required. But when we do go for cord blood banking, one of the things that we do not ask enough is, what are the myths related to cord blood banking? How can I use it? What are the chances that I would need it? Where does the cord blood belong? Who does it belong to? And in what cases I will not be able to use it for the same child or for the next child? Those are the myths that I'm going to cover here now, after you already know the history of cord blood banking. So cord blood stored in a family bank can be used for treating anyone in the family. That's a myth. Cord blood stored in a family bank cannot be used to treat just anyone in the family. Cord blood cells have genetic markers called human leukocyte antigens, HLA, that need to closely match those of the patient, which is what happened in this case, where they had to match the HLA, and if it only matched, then they could do the engrafting. Brothers and sisters with the same biological parents have a 25% chance of being a perfect match, 25%, and a 50% chance of being a partial match. Other family members are much less likely to be a match. So, you do understand here, if one person in the family is ill, the other person's cord blood can be used to treat it only if it matches. If not, it cannot be used, and the matching is more probable to happen when they are siblings. 1. So that's the first fact and the myth. Second myth. cord blood stem cells, when transplanted, can cause a malignancy in the recipient. What's the fact? Secondary cancers are rare after transplantation from any stem cell source, including cord blood stem cells. Screening and procedure to prevent secondary cancers are an important part of the long-term follow-up and patient care after all the chemotherapy and transplants. There is no increased risk of post-transplant malignancy after a cord blood transplant compared to any other type of blood transplant. So all they're trying to say is there is a chance of malignancy, but that's there with all sort of blood transplant, be it bone marrow, be it liver, be it cord blood. And then there's another myth that's out there that is covered in an article which is written in the Indian Journal of Medical Sciences, Myths and Realities by Aruna Nigam. Who is Aruna Nigam? Aruna Nigam is a professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Hamdard Institute of Medical Sciences and Research, Jamia Hamdard, New Delhi. So what does she have to say? And her article is significantly important in this understanding of cord blood banking. And I do in the future hope that she could be on the podcast and help her better understand cord blood banking for all of us in India, because there's a heavy marketing that's happening right now. So she says that a common phrase written in various bank advertisements is that banking of babies' cord blood provides you with life-saving stem cells and offers a lifetime comfort knowing that you can access your baby's preserved stem cells at any time. This statement, she says, has many caveats, meaning this is a myth. There are two important points on umbilical cord banking which need to be understood. Which age group is actually benefiting from this? Meaning, what is the age that somebody has the illness that they can benefit from this? So you remember in the starting, I said there are two types of blood banks. So which sort of blood bank will be able to help you provide the best benefit? A literature research reveals that in hematopoietic transplants, meaning blood transplants in children, a 6x6 match UCB, meaning umbilical cord blood unit, should be considered as the first line source of HSC and HPC if the cell dose is adequate, but this does not stand true for adults, right? Meaning a 6x6 match is required for children, but that's not the case for adults. Umbilical cord blood has a fixed number of cells and its final count is highly dependent on the three factors, which is the technique by which it is stored, the time of the collection, and the transport to storage site. This number is less than 30% of the cell number that can be obtained for bone marrow or mobilized peripheral blood collection, which means, she's trying to say here, that with cord blood, the number of cells that you get after all this procedure is much less, is less than 30% of the cells that you can already obtain from bone marrow transplant or mobilized peripheral blood collection. Although this number is sufficient for children, so if it's less than 30%, it is sufficient for children if they have a disease, but it's not sufficient for adults, meaning if they grow up and then have a disease, they cannot use their cord blood, or there is less chance that they will be able to use their own stored blood bank because the cells would have already been died by then. The cells would not be as potent for adults. So it is a low cell dose, body weight, and results in delayed enfragment, leading to higher morbidity and mortality after umbilical cord blood transplantation. So it's not sufficient for adults. That is why 8x8 human leukocyte antigen matched bone marrow still is the gold standard for alternative donor hematopoietic transplant. So for an adult, bone marrow transplant is better than umbilical cord transplant. So this is something that none of you or none of us are told when the blood banks are advertising themselves. This is also endorsed by the Indian Academy of Pediatrics. They also say that bone marrow transplant is better for adults than umbilical cord. So that's myth 2. So you have to very carefully figure out whether that will be used in the future. The third myth is from this article, which we are sourcing, is that the question is, can it be used in the same child born with a defect and which exposes itself later in life. So can you, if you're planning to have only one child, use the cord stem cell bank for the same baby for which you've insured it for life? Now, which seems to be true, right? The way they advertise. But it's very important to note here, and this I'm reading from the article, that umbilical cord blood collected from a neonate or malignancy cannot be used to treat a genetic disease of malignancy in the same individual, because stored cord blood contains the same genetic variant or pre-malignant cells that led to the condition being treated. Therefore, the Indian Academy of Pediatrics clearly states that cord blood storage is not indicated for autologous blood cells transplantation, meaning if a baby was born with a problem and later in life it exposes and comes up, you cannot use the same blood that you stored from the same baby. Only a baby who was born healthy after can be, the cord blood can be used if they are healthy. Just in the case it was first research, if it's a healthy baby and it's a perfect match, only then this cord blood can be used to treat a problem with the baby who was born earlier or later. So if you were born with a problem, your own cord blood cannot help save it. So it's not an insurance on that particular child. It can be a family insurance, and even in that case there has to be a match for the same baby. It's not helpful if the baby has an issue later in life. That is very important for parents to know before they go for this insurance for the very baby, because it's a lie. It's not an insurance for that baby. So if you're going to have only one child, its own blood is useless in case of genetic disorders. So what are public banks? And what is the suggestion? What may be the suggestion? And again, it's up to you what you want to do with the cord blood. Because what we're not covering in this episode extensively is what are the uses of cord blood and how you can use it for your own baby. So if you know that, you'll be able to better decide what do you want to do for, with the birth of the baby and the cord and the blood. So public blood banks are non-profit banks where there are no charges for storage, but when any cord blood unit is used, the fee is charged. The advantage is that an inventory of cord blood unit is created with good database which is available for use by anyone nationally or internationally. In addition, more than one unit can be used depending on the HLA matching. Private blood banks are more easily available and currently have aggressive marketing strategies. The storage of cord blood units is chargeable to family and is available for use to family member only. Currently, there are more private banks in India and it is a profitable business, whereas there are hardly 1 or 2 public blood banks in India. So as per available data, there were 8 lakh units saved in public banks with 4,100 units released per year, whereas in spite of so many numbers of private banks with huge investment, the 40 lakh units saved in private banks has utilization of only 130 units released per year. So you already know what's the usage, right? In the absence of any valid indication, there is a huge ethical issue with cord blood storage, because if one can really store cord blood, one cannot practice delayed cord clamping, which is something that is very important for the baby. This blood belongs to the baby and should be given to the baby. The extra blood of 80-100 ml is beneficial for all neonates in helping prevent anemia, improves iron stores, and so many other benefits that I discuss in the classes. It belongs to the baby and it's great for the baby. All the benefits are great for the baby as against storing it for that very baby, which is so important to know. How is this blood, the cord and the placenta useful for you and your baby in its current form, right? That's very important to know when you make a decision for that very child. So those were the myths around cord blood banking. And I know this might seem very sensitive. This might seem, if not sensitive, maybe I'm trying to say this might seem a lot of information right now. But it is an information that should be out there in public for anything, any product that is being marketed to you, just basis the hypothesis on the various diseases that might not even happen to your own child. And without even letting you know what can you do with your own baby's blood and placenta and how you can work with it better. If you're just marketed something that maybe used later, it's still half-baked information and can easily scam you. So now we go to what do some news articles say about cord blood banking world around as well as in India. And then we will cover the American College of Gynecologists guideline. We did the IAP, the Indian Academy of Pediatrics guidelines already. So before I go ahead, I wanted to let you know about the only public cord blood bank in India that I know of. It's called G1. It's located in Tamil Nadu, Chennai, and the address is 22 Wheatcrofts Road, Sitanagar, Nungam Bekkam, Tamil Nadu. So if I've pronounced all of that right, so this is where it belongs. You can Google about it. Due to paucity of funds, Jeevan, also known as BeTheCure.in, has temporarily stopped accepting cord blood donations, is what I learned about them on their website or on a page there where I was looking for a public cord blood bank. But I think you are somebody who eventually decide, after learning about the benefits of the cord blood and the placenta for you and your baby, if you still decide with that information that you do want to donate the placenta or the blood, the remaining blood to the blood banks, public blood bank, you can absolutely check with them. And how do they function? If you're just curious, you can do that too. I think it's great to network, and not just network, inquire, ask questions and learn more about these organizations and how are they functioning. If we do not ask questions, if we do not simply be curious, we will always be fooled by the world of marketing and advertising. I think where we are in the food industry and where we are in this healthcare industry is a result of advertising and getting away with false advertising. So to learn more about cord blood banking, I think you can visit their Parents Guide to Cord Blood Foundation. And I'll drop the link, meaning in the show notes. So it will be there. And yes, on to the news articles. So the Business Standard says, in a news article wherein they write that private cord blood banks are fooling the public, says doctors, and that's the headline. And the article says, cord blood banking with dubious benefits has become a money-making scam in India and needs tighter control to protect gullible parents from being exploited, top medical researchers say. Blood collected from the umbilical cord after childbirth is a rich source of stem cells similar to those in the bone marrow. These cells could someday be used as a treatment if the child ever falls ill with certain diseases. The business of harvesting and storage of cord blood for future use has surged in the past decade into a big business, with 15 private banks offering the service alone. They target expectant mothers by touting cord blood as a form of insurance in case their children ever get sick. However, unethical marketing tactics and inflated promises by these largely unregulated banks have alarmed top stem cell researchers and professional bodies of gynecologists. It is time to restrict the rampant commercialization of cord blood bank. Jyotsna Rao, the secretary of the Bengaluru-based Society of Regenerative Medicine and Tissue Engineering, told the INS, the network. The government needs to establish a high-powered committee to look at this menace at the earliest, says Satish Tote, a leading stem cell researcher and CEO of Kasik Research in Mumbai. The original idea for CBB was for overcoming the difficulty of finding a right bone marrow donor for regeneration of blood cells, Rao said. You already know this, but this is very useful adjunct to bone marrow transplantation has been reduced by some companies to the status of a cosmetic product. The way a cosmetic product is sold is just the way this is being sold. LifeCell, for instance, uses a prominent film star for endorsement, and one bank in Bengaluru offers attractive prices to mothers who bank with them. Several nasty marketing methods, including bribing the doctors and nursing staff, are used for recruiting donors, says Rao. Hospitals too are a part of the scam, adds Tote. Last year, the Competition Commission of India fined a Mumbai hospital that was getting ₹20,000 from a cord blood bank as a commission for every patient referred to it. While in the US and Britain, operators cannot advertise cord blood as a life insurance, Tote said families in India were fooled by claims that it was a cure for all. Stem cell therapy for other than blood-related diseases and metabolic disorders are in the early phase of trials and remain only speculative, he said. There's another article in the Times of India which says, City couple wins case against Chennai-based stem cell bank. What's the case? So the case here was that this Chennai couple enrolled with a stem cell bank, and they had to file a case against them. The stem cell bank had offered the couple to preserve the maternal blood and umbilical cord stem cells for a period of 21 years, but the company later claimed that the samples were contaminated. Shobha CV President and Lavanya M. Rai, member District Consumer Forum, directed the Chennai-based company to compensate the complainants. The court ordered the company to pay 22,990 with an interest of 10% in 2014, and also pay rupees 3 lakh as compensation and another 25,000 towards cost and litigation expenses. Thank God for all the lie that they speak to you and they try to fool you with. What happened really, and basis this news article, it says that providing the details of the case, Pritham Kumar Rai said the complaint was filed under Section 12 of the Consumer Protection Act, alleging deficiency in service against the stem bank. The couple delivered a baby on August 24, 2014. Rai told TOI, when my wife was pregnant, the company told us that they have preserved maternal blood and umbilical cord stem cells for a period of 21 years. We were told that the company has expert doctors, nurses, and other staff members, along with a sophisticated laboratory to conduct tests and preserve the maternal blood, umbilical cord tissue, and umbilical cord blood at Chennai and Gurgaon. We were assured that they have the most advanced fail-proof system for transporting the samples to their laboratory, with a specially designed kit. The total amount payable was Rs 44,900. in 2 installments. Out of this, sample collection fee was 3,000, which was not included. During the enrollment, the complainants paid Rs 22,900. And what happened is, soon after the son was born, the blood samples were collected. The company and the party continued to be in touch over email. But after 55 days, they were informed by the bank that the umbilical cord tissue collected was not able to be preserved, as it had been contaminated. Annoyed by this development, the couple approached the consumer court. So your insurance is not foolproof, and the technique is not foolproof of storing blood bank. It is a very delicate process. So now what does the ACOG say, the American College of Gynecologists? It says, umbilical cord blood collected from a neonate cannot be used to treat a genetic disease or malignancy in the same individual, because cord blood contains the same genetic variant of malignant cells that led to the condition being treated. You already know. So the routine collection and storage of umbilical cord blood with a private cord blood bank is not supported by the available evidence. So a lot of these blood banks that come to you are private cord blood banks. So it's not recommended by American College of Gynecologists. The current indications for umbilical cord blood transplantation are limited to select genetic, hematologic, and malignant disorders. There are only a few limited diseases that this can cure. Private umbilical cord blood banking may be considered when there is knowledge of a family member with a medical condition, malignant or genetic, who could potentially from cord blood transplantation, just like the way it was first ever used, where it was known that a family member has a genetic issue which can be cured by a cord blood, and in that case it can be stored with another family member. When it's already known, it's more beneficial. Public umbilical cord blood banking is the recommended method of obtaining umbilical cord blood for use in transplantation, immune therapies, or other medically validated indications. So, with this I come to the end of the episode with all this information given to you to be able to decide best for you what you would like to do with your baby's blood. So if at all, after ensuring the benefits of the cord blood for your baby, If you do decide to donate to a public blood bank, do that with all the prior information. Hope this episode helps you understand the business scam that goes around the littlest scopes of products, human or non-human, and how significantly important it is for you to do your own due research before you decide to biologically insure your own child, which in itself is a lie. There is no biological insurance available at the moment, so choose wisely. There's nobody out there sitting to save us from anything beyond God. Let's operate from the place of nature and love and faith in that one power that created us all. Thank you. If this episode helped you, consider giving us a rating on Apple or Spotify. If any of the episodes over these years on the podcast have helped you in the littlest of the way, consider giving this podcast a donation from the website www.birthagni.com/birthagni-podcast. We are looking for donations and funds to be able to continue the free service, the free resource that this is. So we are really grateful if you could contribute to the technical production and delivery of the podcast. It will be really helpful. Thank you so much. Much love.
There is a field beyond fear, where the body is empowered to take on labor and birth. To land there, it is crucial to take birth education. To enroll into our unique labor and birth preparation course, reach out to us at www.birthagni.com or scroll through all available prenatal and postnatal preparation classes. Thank you for listening, all in the spirit of birth, womanhood, and freedom. Remember, you got the power. This podcast is about physiological birth and does not offer or claim to provide medical knowledge or diagnosis.